At my granddaughter's party, my daughter-in-law said, "She only comes here to show off." She never cared about the child. But in the gift I gave, I included all the letters and photos I had sent, and they never replied. Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached. I smoothed my navy dress for the 5th time while sitting in my car outside my son's house. My hands trembled slightly as I checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror. Emma's 8th birthday. I couldn't believe my granddaughter was already 8 years old. The beautifully wrapped box on the passenger seat contained not just a gift, but my last hope. After years of rejection, I had decided this would be my final attempt. If today didn't work, I would have to accept that my son's family wanted nothing to do with me. Taking a deep breath, I picked up the present and walked to the front door. The sound of children laughing drifted from the backyard. I hesitated before ringing the doorbell, my finger hovering over the button. "You can do this, Nancy," I whispered to myself. "It's just a birthday party." Mark answered the door, surprise briefly flickering across his face before he composed himself. "Mom. You came." His tone was polite but distant. My own son, speaking to me like I was a casual acquaintance. "I wouldn't miss Emma's birthday," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "May I come in?" He stepped aside wordlessly. The house was decorated with pink and purple balloons, streamers hanging from the ceiling. A banner reading, "Happy 8th Birthday Emma," stretched across the living room wall. "Everyone's out back," Mark said, gesturing toward the patio doors. I nodded, clutching my present tighter as I made my way through the house. When I stepped into the backyard, several parents turned to look at me. Some smiled politely, others whispered to each other. I was the stranger at my own granddaughter's party. Emma was by the pool with several other children, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she giggled. She had my eyes, the same blue-gray that had skipped Mark and come straight from me to her. She looked up as I approached, her expression curious but not recognizing. Before I could reach her, Kelly stepped into my path. "Nancy," she said, her voice sugary sweet but her eyes cold. What a surprise. "Hello, Kelly. I brought Emma a present." I held out the box, wrapped in silver paper with a purple bow. She took it from me with a tight smile. "How thoughtful. I'll put it with the others." I watched as she placed my gift at the bottom of a pile on a table, effectively burying it out of sight. Throughout the party, I tried to approach Emma several times, but either Kelly or Mark always seemed to intercept me, steering me toward other adults or suddenly meeting Emma for cake or games. I sat at a table with some of the other parents, picking at a piece of birthday cake I couldn't taste. "Are you related to Emma?" a friendly-looking woman asked. "I'm her grandmother," I said, unable to keep the sadness from my voice. "Nancy." "Oh." The woman looked confused. I thought Kelly's mother was the only grandmother. Before I could respond, I overheard Kelly's voice from nearby, speaking to another mother. "She only shows up for appearances," Kelly was saying, not bothering to lower her voice. "She comes here just to make herself look good. Never actually wanted anything to do with Emma." The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything, the calls never returned, the letters sent back, the visits denied, she dared to paint me as the one who had abandoned my granddaughter? Something snapped inside me. Years of pain, rejection, and silent suffering bubbled to the surface. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the patio. "That's not true," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet yard. Kelly turned, her eyes wide with surprise that I had challenged her. "Excuse me," she said, her tone warning me to back down. I walked to the gift table and retrieved my present from the bottom of the pile. With shaking hands, I untied the purple ribbon and removed the silver wrapping paper. "This isn't just a birthday gift," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I opened the box to reveal a small wooden chest. "This is proof." I lifted the lid, revealing dozens of letters, cards, and photographs. I pulled out the first letter, dated shortly after Emma was born. My dearest Emma, I read, my voice breaking. Though I haven't been allowed to meet you yet, I already love you more than words can say. I looked directly at Kelly, whose face had gone pale. I wrote to her every month for 8 years. I sent birthday cards, Christmas presents, Valentine's Day cards. I called every Sunday. I drove to your house so many times, only to be turned away at the door. Mark stepped forward, confusion written across his face. Mom, what are you talking about? I handed him a stack of letters, all marked "Return to Sender," in Kelly's handwriting. Ask your wife, I said, as tears finally spilled down my cheeks. Ask her why she told you I never cared, when all I've done for 8 years is try to be part of Emma's life. Emma had moved closer, her small face serious as she looked at the chest full of letters addressed to her. Are those all for me? She asked, her voice small and curious. And in that moment, as my granddaughter looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time, I knew the wall of lies was finally beginning to crumble. The look on Mark's face as he held those returned letters was something I'll never forget. Confusion, then disbelief, followed by the first flickers of dawning horror. These are all in Kelly's handwriting, he said quietly, turning one envelope over and then another. Kelly's face had transformed from shock to defensive anger. We need to talk about this in private, she hissed, glancing around at the party guests who were watching the scene unfold with undisguised interest. One of the mothers quickly stepped in. Hey kids, who wants to play freeze tag? She called, leading Emma and her friends to the far side of the yard. The other adults awkwardly dispersed, giving us space while pretending not to listen. I stood my ground, the chest of letters still open in my arms. No more privacy, Kelly. Privacy is what allowed you to erase me from Emma's life. Mark was sifting through the photos now, pictures of me at places I'd hoped to take Emma someday. The botanical gardens. The children's museum. The carousel at Harper Park. You wrote all these? He asked, his voice hollow. One every month, I replied. For 8 years. I never missed a month. Mark turned to Kelly, who was visibly fuming now. Did you know about these? Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. She's making a scene to get attention. It's what she does. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my call history. I've called every Sunday at 2 p.m. since Emma was born. Your number, Mark. Not once did you pick up. That's when we have family time, Kelly said quickly. We never answer calls during. I changed the time, I interrupted. After the first year, I tried calling at different times, different days. Nothing worked. Mark's expression had darkened. You told me she never called. That she was too busy with her new life after Dad died to bother with us. Kelly's composure began to crack. She was depressed, Mark. You remember how she was after your father passed. She wasn't in any state to be around a baby. The unfairness of it all made my chest ache. I was grieving, yes. But Emma would have been my reason to keep going. You took that from me. I turned to Mark, memories flooding back. Remember when I showed up 2 weeks after Emma was born? You wouldn't let me hold her. Kelly said she was sleeping and couldn't be disturbed. She was sleeping, Kelly interjected. For the 4 hours I sat in your living room? I challenged. And the next 3 times I visited? Mark looked troubled. I thought you just had bad timing. I shook my head sadly. It wasn't timing, Mark. It was a pattern. I began to tell them about every attempt I'd made over the years. How after those initial visits, Kelly had instituted rules. I could only come when invited. Then it became I could only come when both of them were home. Then only on certain days. Then only for an hour at a time. The last time I saw Emma, she was 3 years old, I said. You told me she was going through a phase where strangers made her anxious. You were a stranger to her, Kelly said defensively. Because you made me one, I replied, my voice breaking. I was never given a chance to be anything else. I turned back to my son. After that, every time I called to arrange a visit, there was an excuse. She was sick. You were busy. It wasn't a good time. Eventually, I just started showing up, hoping to catch a glimpse of her playing in the yard or walking to the school bus. That's stalking, Kelly muttered. That's desperation, I corrected her. Mark was looking through more of the letters now, his face growing increasingly troubled. He pulled out a birthday card for Emma's 5th birthday. Inside was a note about a savings account I'd set up for her. "You've been putting money away for her education?" he asked. I nodded. Every month. I thought even if I couldn't be there, I could still help secure her future. Mark ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. "Mom, I had no idea. She told me you weren't interested in being involved. That you'd made it clear you wanted to live your own life." "My life has been empty without you and Emma in it," I said simply. "After your father died, you were all I had left." Kelly crossed her arms defensively. "She's manipulating you, Mark. She shows up after years of absence with some letters and suddenly she's the victim." Mark held up one of the photographs, me standing in front of their house in the snow, a Christmas gift in my arms. The date stamp showed December 25th, 3 years ago. "Did you know about this?" he asked Kelly, his voice dangerously quiet. Kelly faltered. I might have seen her from the window. But it was Christmas Day, Mark. We were busy with Emma's presents and you saw my mother standing alone in the snow on Christmas Day, and you didn't let her in?" Mark's voice rose in disbelief. "She should have called first," Kelly retorted. "I did call," I said quietly. "I called every day that week. You never picked up." Mark's face had gone pale. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "Why didn't you tell me this was happening?" he asked. I sighed deeply. "I tried, Mark. But you were always so busy, so stressed with work. And Kelly was always there, finishing my sentences, interrupting, making it sound like I was being difficult." I met his eyes. "And maybe part of me was afraid to know if you were choosing to exclude me." Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at the sky, which had begun to darken with approaching storm clouds. "The weather alert says there's a thunderstorm coming," he said, his voice mechanical. "We need to get the kids inside." As if on cue, the first raindrops began to fall. The party dissolved into chaos as parents gathered their children, collecting half-eaten cake and goodie bags on their way to the door. I stood there, my chest of letters getting damp in the rain, watching as 8 years of rejection and loneliness finally came to light. Mark looked torn between helping Kelly manage the party's abrupt end and continuing our conversation. "We need to talk about this," he said to me, his voice low and urgent. "Really talk. Can you stay after everyone leaves?" Before I could answer, Emma ran up to us, her little face concerned as she looked at the chest in my arms. "Are those really all for me?" she asked again, pointing at the letters. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Every single one." She looked up at me, her blue-gray eyes, my eyes, studying my face curiously. "Why didn't I get them before?" In that moment, as rain fell around us and the truth hung heavy in the air, I realized we had reached a turning point from which there would be no going back. The last guest hurried out the front door as thunder rumbled overhead. Mark closed it with a quiet click, then stood there for a moment, his forehead pressed against the wood. Emma had been sent upstairs to change out of her wet clothes, leaving the three of us in a silence so thick I could barely breathe. 8 years, Mark finally said, turning to face us. His voice was controlled, but I could see the muscle working in his jaw, just like his father when he was angry. 8 years of lies. Kelly sat on the edge of the sofa, her posture rigid. I was protecting our family. From what? Mark demanded. From my mother? You don't understand, Kelly said, her voice rising. You were always working. You didn't see how she tried to take over after Emma was born. Always criticizing, always having a better way to do things. I shook my head, stunned by the accusation. I offered to help, Kelly. That's all. You questioned everything. How I fed her, how I held her, how I dressed her. Kelly's eyes flashed. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be her mother. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That was never my intention, I said quietly. I was just trying to help a new mother. I didn't need your help. Kelly snapped. I needed you to back off and let me be a mother to my own child. Mark looked between us, running a hand through his hair. So your solution was to cut her out entirely? To lie to me for 8 years? Kelly's face flushed. I did what I thought was right. Right? Mark repeated incredulously. He picked up one of the returned letters from the coffee table where I'd placed the chest. This wasn't right, Kelly. This was cruel. A small voice came from the stairway. Daddy, why is everyone yelling? We all turned to see Emma standing halfway down the stairs, changed into dry clothes, her hair still damp from the rain. The birthday girl, witnessing her family falling apart on what should have been a happy day. Mark's expression softened immediately. We're just having a grown-up talk, sweetheart. Emma's eyes drifted to me, then to the wooden chest on the coffee table. Can I read my letters now? The simple question hung in the air. Kelly opened her mouth as if to object, but Mark silenced her with a look. Of course you can, he said gently. Those letters were always meant for you. Emma came down the rest of the stairs and approached the coffee table cautiously, as if the chest might disappear if she moved too quickly. She picked up one of the envelopes, tracing her name written on the front in my careful handwriting. Who are you again? She asked me, her eyes curious rather than accusatory. The question broke my heart all over again. I'm your grandmother, Emma. Your dad's mom. She frowned slightly. But Grandma Patty is Daddy's mom. Grandma Patty is my stepmom, Mark explained quietly. This is my real mom. Your Grandma Nancy. Emma looked at me with renewed interest. Did you really write all these letters to me? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Why didn't I get them before? The innocent question hung in the air like a blade. Kelly had gone very still, her eyes locked on her daughter. There was a mistake, Mark said finally. The letters got lost for a while, but now we've found them. Emma seemed to accept this explanation. She sat cross-legged on the floor and carefully opened the envelope in her hands, pulling out a card with a kitten on the front. Dear Emma, she read slowly, her 8-year-old voice giving new life to words I'd written on her 5th birthday. Today you are 5 years old. I wonder if you still love butterflies like you did when I last saw you, or if you found new things to love. Kelly stood abruptly. It's getting late. Emma needs her dinner. I'm reading, Emma protested, clutching the card. You can read more tomorrow, Kelly said firmly. No. Mark's voice was quiet but resolute. She can read them now if she wants to. Kelly's face flushed with anger. I'm her mother, Mark. I decide what's best for her. Like you decided what was best for our family by cutting my mother out of our lives? Mark's voice remained calm, but there was a hardness to it I'd never heard before. Kelly stared at him, then at me, her expression a mixture of rage and fear. Without another word, she turned and stormed upstairs. A door slammed somewhere above us. Emma looked up from her letter, her eyes wide. Is Mommy mad at me? No, sweetheart, Mark said quickly, sitting down beside her. Mommy's just having a hard day. Emma went back to reading, her small fingers carefully unfolding another letter. Mark looked at me over her head, his expression a storm of confusion, anger, and regret. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered. I had no idea. I know, I said, and I meant it. My son had been deceived as surely as I had been rejected. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind the fresh scent of rain and the soft patter of water dripping from the eaves. Inside, a different kind of storm was just beginning, one that would shake our family to its foundations. Emma looked up from her third letter, her eyes shining. You went to the butterfly garden for me? Because I liked butterflies? I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I went every year on your birthday. I took pictures of the prettiest ones to show you someday. She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and for the first time in 8 years, I felt a flicker of hope. 3 days after Emma's birthday party, I was washing dishes when my phone rang. I nearly dropped a plate when I saw Mark's name on the screen. With trembling fingers, I answered. Mom? His voice sounded tired. Can we come over? Emma and me. My heart leapt. Of course. When? We're actually in your neighborhood now. Is that okay? 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I'd spent those minutes frantically tidying up, wondering if I should have bought cookies or made lemonade, anything to make this visit perfect. When I opened the door, Emma stood there holding her father's hand. She wore a yellow sundress and carried the wooden chest of letters. Hi, Grandma Nancy, she said with a shy smile that melted my heart. Hello, sweetheart, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Thanks for seeing us, Mom. I led them into my living room, where I'd set out cookies and lemonade after all. Emma's eyes widened at the sight. Is that for me? She asked. For all of us, I said, smiling as she immediately reached for a cookie. Mark sank into an armchair, rubbing his face. Kelly doesn't know we're here. I sat down slowly, the weight of his words settling over me. I see. She's. He glanced at Emma, clearly measuring his words. She's having a hard time with everything. I understand, I said, though part of me didn't understand at all. How could she still try to keep Emma from me after the truth had come out? Emma had already finished her first cookie and was reaching for another. Daddy says you have pictures of me as a baby. I do, I said, grateful for the change in subject. I went to my bookshelf and retrieved a photo album I'd kept hidden away for years, too painful to look at but too precious to discard. Emma curled up next to me on the sofa as I opened it. The first photo showed me in the hospital waiting room the day she was born, clutching a pink teddy bear I hadn't been allowed to give her. That's you in the hospital, I explained. I wasn't allowed in the room, but I waited outside for 14 hours until you arrived. Mark made a small, pained sound, but I continued turning pages. There weren't many photos, just the few times I'd been allowed to see Emma as a baby and toddler. Some were taken from a distance, at a park or outside their house. Why do you look sad in all these pictures? Emma asked innocently. I hesitated, not wanting to say anything that would turn her against her mother. I was sad because I didn't get to see you very often. Because the letters got lost, she asked, repeating Mark's simplified explanation. Before I could answer, Mark spoke up. Emma, why don't you explore Grandma's house? I bet she has some interesting things. After she scampered off, Mark leaned forward, his voice low. Kelly's threatening to leave me if I let you have a relationship with Emma. My heart sank. Oh, Mark. I told her that's not her decision to make anymore. His voice was firm but weary. I'm so angry with her, Mom. I feel like I don't even know who she is. She was protecting her family the only way she knew how, I said, surprising myself by defending her. Mark looked up, confused. How can you say that? After what she did to you? I sighed deeply. I've had 3 days to think about this, Mark. And while I'll never agree with what Kelly did, I can understand the fear behind it. Fear? Fear of not being good enough. Fear of being replaced. Fear of losing control. I thought of Kelly's words at the party. I might have been overbearing when Emma was born. I was so excited to be a grandmother, and so desperate to help after losing your father. I may have overstepped. That doesn't justify cutting you out of our lives, Mark insisted. No, it doesn't, I agreed. But understanding where it came from might help us find a way forward. Emma's delighted squeal came from my bedroom. Daddy. Grandma has a dollhouse just like the one in my letters. Mark's expression softened. You built her the dollhouse you wrote about? I nodded. I made it 3 years ago, for her 5th birthday. I described it in my letters, hoping that someday she might get to play with it. Mark's eyes filled with tears. I've been a terrible son. No, I said firmly, reaching for his hand. You were deceived. By someone you trusted completely. Emma ran back into the living room, her eyes shining. Can I play with the dollhouse, Grandma? Of course, sweetheart. It's yours. She beamed and ran back to my bedroom. Mark and I sat in silence for a moment, listening to her happy murmurs as she played. What happens now? I finally asked. Mark ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. Kelly's staying with her sister for a few days. She says she needs time to think. And Emma? She's with me. She keeps asking questions about you, about why she never knew you before. He looked at me, his expression troubled. I don't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth, I said gently. A version she can understand. Mark nodded slowly. I'm trying to fix this, Mom. I promise. I know you are. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, the 3 of us. I showed Emma how to bake my famous snickerdoodles, taught her the card game her father had loved as a boy, and listened to her chatter about school and friends and her pet goldfish named Sparkles. When it was time for them to leave, Emma hugged me tightly. Can I come back tomorrow? I looked at Mark, not wanting to overstep or make promises I couldn't keep. Not tomorrow, sweetheart, he said gently. But soon. As they walked to the car, Mark turned back. I'll call you, he promised. I stood in the doorway long after their car had disappeared from view, my heart full for the first time in years. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Kelly. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight. About Emma. My grip on the phone tightened. I'm listening. I'm not going to pretend to be happy about this, she said. But Mark is insisting that you be allowed to see Emma. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. Thank you, Kelly. I'm not doing it for you, she replied sharply. I'm doing it for my marriage. And there will be rules. Of course there would be rules. There had always been rules with Kelly. I understand, I said, willing to agree to almost anything if it meant seeing my granddaughter. I'll be present for all visits, she continued. At least at first. And we'll start with once a month. Once a month wasn't much, but it was infinitely more than the nothing I'd had for years. That sounds fair, I said, though part of me wanted to argue for more. There was a long pause. I didn't do it to be cruel, Kelly finally said, her voice softer. I did it because I thought it was best for Emma. I didn't respond, not trusting myself to speak. I'll bring her on Saturday, Kelly said after the silence stretched too long. 10 o'clock. I'll be here, I promised. After we hung up, I sat on my sofa, staring at the phone in my hand. It wasn't forgiveness, and it certainly wasn't an apology, but it was a start. A fragile, tentative beginning that I would nurture with all the patience and love I possessed. For the first time in 8 years, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, I could be a real grandmother at last. The first Saturday visit was as tense as I'd expected. Kelly sat rigidly on my couch, checking her watch every few minutes while Emma and I played with the dollhouse. Emma chattered away, oblivious to the crackling tension between the adults in the room. 10 more minutes, Emma, Kelly announced after barely an hour. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that any time with Emma was better than none. This pattern continued for 2 months, strained hour-long visits with Kelly watching our every interaction. Sometimes Mark came too, creating a fragile buffer between Kelly and me. Other times, he conspired to give me a few precious minutes alone with Emma by asking Kelly to help him with something in the car. It was during one of these brief windows that Emma looked up from the dollhouse and asked, "Why doesn't Mommy like you, Grandma Nancy? The innocent question caught me off guard. I think sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings about each other, I said carefully. Emma considered this, her small brow furrowed. Daddy says Mommy was afraid. I paused, surprised by Mark's honesty with his daughter. What do you think about that? Emma shrugged, moving a tiny chair in the dollhouse. I think Mommy's afraid of a lot of things. The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze me. During our 4th month of visits, Mark called me on a Tuesday evening. Mom, I've been thinking, he said, his voice tentative. Would you be willing to meet with a family therapist? All of us together? I hesitated. Do you think Kelly would agree to that? It was her idea, actually, he said, surprising me. And so, the following week, I found myself sitting in a warm, neutral office, across from Kelly and Mark, with Emma in the playroom next door with an assistant. Dr. Jensen, a calm woman in her 50s, looked between us. I understand there's been a lot of pain in this family, she began. Who would like to start? The silence stretched uncomfortably until Kelly spoke. I made a terrible mistake, she said, her voice so quiet I had to lean forward to hear her. I was wrong to keep Nancy away from Emma. I stared at her, stunned by the admission I never thought I'd hear. But I need you both to understand why I did it, she continued, her hands twisting in her lap. When Emma was born, I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing. My own mother was absent. Emotionally, physically. She cared more about her next drink than about me. I felt a flicker of understanding begin to form. When Nancy came to help after Emma was born, all I could see was criticism. Every suggestion felt like an accusation that I wasn't good enough. Kelly's voice trembled. And the way Emma responded to her immediately, it was like she knew Nancy would be a better mother than me. Kelly, that's not, Mark began, but Dr. Jensen gently raised her hand to let Kelly continue. I know it wasn't rational, Kelly admitted. But in my mind, I was protecting my place in Emma's life. I was terrified of being replaced, of being pushed aside like my mother pushed me aside. She looked at me directly for perhaps the first time. It doesn't excuse what I did. But I need you to know it wasn't about you, Nancy. It was about my own fears, my own brokenness. The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Dr. Jensen turned to me. Nancy, how does hearing this make you feel? I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. I'm angry, I admitted. I lost 8 years with my granddaughter that I can never get back. Kelly flinched, but I continued. But I also understand fear. After my husband died, I was terrified of losing Mark too, my only child. Maybe I did come on too strong with Emma. Maybe I was trying to fill the hole in my heart by being needed. I looked at Kelly, seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. Not as the woman who had kept me from my granddaughter, but as a wounded person whose actions, however harmful, came from a place of genuine pain. I wish you had talked to me, I said softly. Instead of shutting me out. I didn't know how, Kelly admitted. And then one lie led to another, and soon it felt impossible to undo what I'd done. Mark reached out, taking both our hands in his. I failed both of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I was so caught up in work, in providing for my family financially, that I didn't see what was happening emotionally. Dr. Jensen nodded encouragingly. This is good. Recognizing our own contributions to the situation is essential for healing. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, perhaps for the first time. About fears and insecurities, about misunderstandings and assumptions. About the damage done and the possibility of repair. When Emma joined us at the end of the session, she looked between us cautiously, sensing the emotional weight in the room. Are you all still mad? She asked hesitantly. Mark pulled her into a hug. No, sweetheart. We're all working on not being mad anymore. Good, Emma said decisively. Because I want us all to be happy. As we left the therapist's office, walking together to the parking lot, I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness, exactly, that would take more time, but understanding. A foundation upon which, perhaps, we could build something new. Kelly hesitated beside her car, then turned to me. Would you like to come for dinner on Sunday? A real family dinner? The invitation, so unexpected, brought tears to my eyes. I'd like that very much. Emma, standing between us, took both our hands in hers. Can we have macaroni and cheese? Kelly and I looked at each other over Emma's head and, for the first time, shared a genuine smile. Yes, we said in unison. We can have macaroni and cheese. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen frosting a cake. Not just any cake, a butterfly-shaped cake for Emma's 9th birthday. The doorbell rang, and I quickly wiped my hands on a dish towel. Coming. I called, giving the cake one last look before hurrying to the door. Emma burst in the moment I opened it, wrapping her arms around my waist. Grandma Nancy. Is it ready? Can I see it? I laughed, hugging her back. Hello to you too, sweetheart. Yes, it's ready. Mark followed her in, carrying a small stack of presents. Sorry, Mom. She's been talking about this cake all week. As she should, I replied, winking at Emma. It's a masterpiece, if I do say so myself. Kelly was the last to enter, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. These are for you, she said, handing them to me. Thank you for hosting. There was still a hint of awkwardness between us, but it had softened considerably over the past year. Weekly therapy sessions had gradually given way to monthly check-ins, and while we would never be best friends, we had found a way to be family. They're beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. Let me put them in water. We moved to the kitchen where Emma gasped at the butterfly cake. It's perfect. Just like the ones in your letters. The wooden chest of letters now lived at their house, each one read and treasured. Emma had created a special shelf in her room for them, alongside the photos and small gifts that had finally reached their intended recipient. Now, birthday girl, I said, would you like to help me finish setting up? Emma nodded eagerly, and we worked together laying out plates and napkins while Mark and Kelly carried chairs to the backyard. I had spent the past week transforming my small garden into a butterfly paradise for the party, with colorful streamers and twinkling lights. As we worked, I marveled at how much had changed in a year. The monthly visits had quickly become weekly, then twice weekly. Emma now spent every other Saturday with me, sometimes with Kelly, sometimes just with Mark, and occasionally, miraculously, on her own. The doorbell rang again, announcing the arrival of Emma's friends. Soon my quiet house was filled with the chaotic energy of 9-year-olds, their laughter and excited voices creating a symphony that I had once thought I would never hear. As the party unfolded, I found myself standing slightly apart, watching Emma blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and family. Kelly caught my eye from across the yard and made her way over to me. She looks happy, Kelly said, following my gaze to Emma. She does, I agreed. Kelly hesitated, then added, You've been good for her, Nancy. I was wrong to keep you apart. The admission still surprised me, even after all our therapy sessions and difficult conversations. Thank you for finding a way to let me in, I replied simply. Kelly smiled faintly. I have something for you. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a silver frame containing a photo taken just a month ago, the four of us at the butterfly garden. Emma stood between Kelly and me, with Mark behind us, all of us smiling. Our first real family photo, Kelly said quietly. I felt tears well up in my eyes. It's perfect. Grandma. Mom. Emma called from across the yard. Come take a picture with me and my cake. Kelly and I exchanged glances, then walked together to join Emma. As we posed on either side of her, I felt a sense of completeness that had been missing for so long. Later, after the guests had gone and Emma was opening her presents at the dining table, Mark sat down beside me on the porch swing. Thank you, he said simply. For what? The party? It was my pleasure. He shook his head. For not giving up on us. For giving Kelly a chance to make things right. For loving Emma so completely even when you weren't allowed to show it. I squeezed his hand. She's worth it. You all are. Inside, we could hear Emma's excited squeal as she opened my gift, a handmade quilt with butterflies embroidered in the corners and photographs of the 3 generations of women in our family transferred onto some of the squares. It's our story, she exclaimed as I walked back inside. Look, Mom. Here's you and me when I was a baby, and here's Grandma Nancy with Dad when he was little, and here we all are at the butterfly garden. Kelly traced one of the photographs with her finger. It's beautiful, Nancy. She'll treasure it forever. Just like I treasure her, I said softly. That evening, as they prepared to leave, Emma hugged me tightly. This was the best birthday ever. I'm glad, sweetheart. I'll see you on Wednesday for our baking lesson. She nodded enthusiastically. I can't wait. As they walked to the car, Kelly turned back. Same time next Sunday for family dinner? I'll be there, I promised. I stood in the doorway, watching as they drove away, Emma waving frantically from the back window until they turned the corner. The house felt suddenly quiet, but it wasn't the lonely silence I had known for so many years. It was a peaceful quiet, filled with the echoes of laughter and the promise of more to come. On my mantel, the new family photo stood beside an older one, me holding baby Mark, my husband's arm around my shoulders. Past and present, sorrow and joy, all part of the tapestry that made up our imperfect, complicated, precious family. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the calendar, looking at the weeks ahead filled with Emma's visits, family dinners, and therapy sessions that had evolved into family check-ins. No more empty days stretching endlessly before me. No more letters that would never be read. The truth had come out, painful as it was. The healing had begun, slow and sometimes awkward, but genuine. And now, finally, I was where I had always wanted to be, not just a grandmother in name, but in reality, woven into the fabric of my granddaughter's life. I had lost 8 years, yes. But we had all the future ahead of us. And I intended to make every moment count.